Hi everyone, hello. Today we're going to be talking about the concept, the idea of self-love, what it is, why is it so important in our lives, what it means to love yourself truly. I feel like when I say self-love, it almost sounds funny, kind of corny, and that's because it's so overused in social media and mainstream media and also by influencers that this doesn't really have a really strong meaning when we just say it like that. It's kind of empty. We're going to be talking about a true, deep, unconditional self-love, self-acceptance, self-empathy. So I want to definitely go more in depth into the meaning of the word itself. There is a lot of scientific evidence suggesting that having self-love simply makes our lives healthier, better, improves our mental, physical health, and our overall well-being. It's not always obvious that we hate ourselves, right? You don't always wake up thinking, I hate myself, I don't love myself, I don't accept myself. Some people do, but it doesn't mean that those who don't struggle with self-love. Oftentimes, it is when we encounter some difficulties, breakups, criticism, failure, that's where we are really hard on ourselves. That's where we struggle to accept that failure is a part of life, that it's not our fault. We blame ourselves, we feel shame and guilt, and we are really hard on ourselves. What does it actually mean to love yourself? This is what we're going to explore today. I believe that understanding is the key. If you understand why you are the way you are, you can change it. You can decide and pick the right steps, the right path to finally change it or start working on it. Usually people who have self-love and have good, positive relationship with self don't really think about it. That's just how they operate. That's just how they go by their life. We do think about self-love when we struggle with it, when we notice that we need to change something because something is not going right. Life feels like a struggle. What else is going on in our lives that is definitely can be subscribed to low self-view and poor self-view and lack of self-love? Well, we experience a lot of anxiety, we have guilt, shame, we let ourselves be walked over for other people, we don't have very strong boundaries. We struggle with self-discipline, we struggle with knowing what we really want and which choices we should make because we don't really know that we can trust ourselves truly. We often take things very personally, we think things are our fault, and we struggle with criticism and the fact that other people might not be accepting us. We put our value in other people's hands, and our value depends on what other people feel like, and we take it to heart. We struggle with courage, even if we have great ideas, we don't really believe in those, we struggle with confidence. We might engage in relationships that are not respectful or even toxic. We struggle with authenticity because, again, we don't really trust ourselves, we don't really know what we want, and we want to put a persona on so other people accept and like us. And in consequence of this, we fear rejection. Basically, all of this makes the view of life as a struggle. Life happens to me. Things happen to me and I just have to roll with it, rather than life happens for me and I make the decisions and I'm in charge because I know what's best for me. Let's take a look at what body of research, what science says about self-love and how it defines it. Self-love is a state of appreciation for oneself that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. Self-love means having a high regard for your well-being and happiness. Self-love means taking care of your own needs and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. The scientific term for self-love is self-positivity bias, which is basically defined by this idea that if you're a person that rates themselves higher, if you think of yourself highly, like I'm great, I'm good, I'm kind, I have lots of skills, then you express those things more in life. You present that way to other people. Cultivating this self-positivity bias has actually many evidence-based benefits. The psychologist from the Tufts University explained that positively based self-views are argued to be the key component of health, psychological functioning, influencing self-esteem, motivation, and determination. Indeed, a lack of self-positivity bias or even a self-negativity bias may contribute to mood and anxiety disorder. I personally learned so much about the importance of self-love and lack of it in my life when I was going through very difficult loss, very sudden loss of my mom, and also when I became a mom and learned that how I think and how I operate in life directly impacts my kids. So like I said in the beginning, the most challenging times of my life actually revealed specifically the areas and the places where I struggle the most. To me, self-love is the most important. It's the most important relationship of my life. It's the foundation. And I know from my own experience that if I struggle with that, then I struggle in a lot of different areas. Relationships, self-discipline struggling, my health is struggling. I am not my best self like I would want to be. And again, I am not talking about self-love where you think you're perfect, where you think, I'm just loving myself. I'm going to stand in front of a mirror and say it 100 times and it will work. I'm talking about compassion, self-acceptance, deep understanding of self, and knowing that even when you struggle, you have your own back. I'm really curious what other people think self-love is and what it looks like in your daily life. So if you would like to, let me know in the comments. I would love that. I would love to learn what it looks like for you, for those people who are interested in learning about self-love. Sometimes it may feel like you are the only person in the world struggling with it and everybody else is doing great because we don't generally talk about it. In fact, globally, 1 out of 3 people struggles with self-love. So if you do have difficulty with that, you're definitely not alone. And now I want to bring up the attachment theory, like I said in the beginning, because that explains why are we wired the way we are and why we struggle with accepting ourselves and why we have that negative view or criticism towards ourselves. Attachment theory explains that we learn so much about ourselves and about life around us during our first few years of life. They're called formative years of life. So basically during those years, our brain forms something like a template blueprint for everything, for what relationships should look like, who am I, what love looks like, what trust looks like, where can I be myself, where do I have to kind of pretend to fit in, what are my parents doing and how are they doing it. So basically we learn from our environment and we learn from our parents, and we learn looking at how and experiencing how our parents treat us. So for example, if they leave us alone when we are upset, distressed, or when we do something wrong, they scold us and leave us alone to cry, we learn that our negative feelings are not welcome, that we need to hide when we have difficult times. That's basically what happens during those formative years. We also observe what our parents say to each other, themselves, to other people, how they act around different people. Ultimately, what they say to us becomes our own voice, becomes internalized. And this is not to say that our parents are to be blamed for how we are, because our parents did the best they could. I mean, I'm hoping your parents did the best they could. My parents definitely did, but they still made a lot of mistakes. They carried a lot of trauma and negativity and difficulty with their own self-love into their parenting and their marriage. If your parents constantly told you that your room looks like a mess and you're lazy and you can't even keep up your room together, then, if you heard that over and over and over again, that's what you're locked in. So then you think you're lazy, then you think you're disorganized, then you think you can't keep things organized, and then you just start to think that way of yourself. Our brain has something called reticular activating system. This is basically like a filter who takes the things that we focused on or had emotional reaction to, and then it picks it out from all the information that come to us during our day and focuses on that. So basically, it sifts through all the data that comes to you and picks out the things that are important to you, or it thinks that are important to you. And this is not to make our life more difficult or harder. This is actually to make our life more efficient, because there's so much information coming at us that our brain is going to focus on the things that we often heard that are familiar. And that's why if you heard something over and over and over again from different people, from school, from your parents, if you saw your parents struggle with certain areas of their life and then you kind of internalize it, then your brain just focuses on it and picks it out from other things. So if you accept something as true about yourself, like I'm not an organized person, if you think that, your brain is then going to look for evidence for all these things, and I'm sure you can find some evidence that you're not organized, because nobody's organized all the time. So all of this is very important to understand and to kind of ponder on, because it explains that it's not our fault that we think and we are wired the way we are. Our brain is wired the way we are because of our upbringing, because of other people, and because maybe we didn't have access to a certain information and our parents did it, So they did say certain things to us, and they didn't focus on praising us or building our confidence, and that's why we are the way we are. But the good news is that our brain has something called neuroplasticity, which basically means that our brain can change. It can build new circuits and new neural connections, so it can completely change. Self-directed neuroplasticity is the process of physically changing our brain structures and functions by intentionally redirecting our focus and what we pay attention to. In this way, it is possible to rewire our brains to get unstuck and overcome limiting beliefs, negative thinking patterns, disruptive emotion, ill self, and self-sabotaging behaviors. And this is what the focus of cognitive behavioral therapy is. And that's why people go to therapy and work on these things to change those deeply seated, strong beliefs, negative beliefs that they have about themselves. A core focus in cognitive behavior therapy is the interplay between how we think, so the cognition, and how we feel, so the emotion, and how we act, the behavior. Simply put, our thoughts determine our emotions, and then that determines how we act, our behaviors. So what can we do in our daily life to start rewiring our brain? The first step, and something that is very important and something that I already mentioned, is the cognitive behavioral therapy, something that you can do with a therapist. Focus on the specific negative thoughts and beliefs that you want to change in your life. Another very important part of rewiring your brain would be something called reparenting. Knowing that the wiring of our brain mostly happened in our childhood, we can use the reparenting as a way of kind of giving ourselves the upbringing, the ideal, perfect upbringing, to give us the things that we weren't given, the things that would help us have a better self-esteem and self-love. So reparenting yourself would look like focusing on recognizing that the way you're operating right now is based on childhood, and giving yourself, all that you might not have been given, the compassion, the empathy, the praise, the love that you needed when you were a child. Self-care is a very important part of working on your self-love. So going back to your hobbies and cultivating joy, finding a lot of things that brings you joy and makes you happy without, doing it for other people or any monetary value, anything in return, just doing something just for your own pleasure. Investing in your growth, either through courses, reading, self-development, that is a big part of building your positive self-view and self-love. Being compassionate towards yourself, understanding that everybody makes mistakes. There's reasons why we make certain mistakes. Being empathetic and understanding. Letting go of perfection and letting go of what we thought we would be right now, and letting go of what other people thought or think we should be. Deep, unconditional acceptance is a huge part of building true, deep self-love. Now, that doesn't mean that you think you're perfect and you don't have to change. There's actually something called the curious paradox, coined by Carl Rogers, where it basically says that if I accept myself, then I can change. And it kind of sounds like, wait, what? If I do accept myself, then why would I change, right? But if you do accept yourself, then you can see that you want to change from the place of love and understanding and caring, not from a place of hatred, where you try to change and you constantly make the same mistakes and you go even worse. It gets even worse. You start hating yourself even more. If you accept yourself, you can make the change from the place of love. Being proud of yourself, celebrating your wins, and making sure that you notice the times where you're making the changes and celebrating that. Being kind, compassionate, knowing when to take a break and taking that break, setting up boundaries, not feeling sorry for yourself, but feeling empowered by the fact that you can decide where is the boundary and why, and then you can be the person who takes care of your own needs. Putting yourself first, and that may seem like, oh, so I need to be selfish. And some people become even arrogant and oblivious to other people. That's not what I'm talking about. And as a mom, I can say that I really know that it's so important to put yourself first. You need to put yourself first, because if you won't, other people also won't. So you need to teach other people how you want them to treat you. This is all that I have prepared for you guys for today's video. I hope you did enjoy it, found it interesting and inspiring. If you did, please let me know in the comment box. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.